Last Poké Ball. The sky had forgotten how to be blue. Ash-grey clouds choked the horizon, smeared with streaks of crimson where the sun used to rise. The air was thick with ash and dust, carrying the faint metallic tang of decay. Ruins of cities dotted the landscape like broken teeth, pewter, cerulean, even saffron, all crumbling relics swallowed by time and something worse. No one really remembered how it started. Maybe it was the war between regions or the experiments in Sylph Co's underground labs. Some said it was Mewtwo's revenge, others blamed Arceus's wrath. But the truth didn't matter anymore. What mattered was survival, and survival was a currency few could afford. Cal trudged across the cracked earth, the jagged skyline of what was once Viridian City, a faint silhouette behind him. His tattered cloak flapped weakly in the wind, that stitched with patches from old trainer uniforms, badges, logos, even the faded insignia of the Pokémon League. A rusted chain hung from his neck, holding a single object, the last functioning Pokéball. Not just his last, the last. Pokémon were still out there, but not the way people remembered. The wild ones had changed, feral, mutated by exposure to radiation toxins and whatever dark forces had bled into the world during the collapse. Their forms were twisted, their cries distorted into guttural wails. They didn't fight alongside humans anymore, they hunted them. Cal had once been a trainer, now he was just prey with a weapon. His steps slowed as he reached an overgrown checkpoint, what used to be Route 2. The remnants of a rusted gate leaned at an angle, half buried in vines thick with thorns. A faded sign dangled from a single chain, its lettering barely visible. Welcome to Pallet Town. Cal hesitated. Pallet was just a memory now. A ghost story whispered around dying fires, but the rumors said something was still there, waiting. And if the stories were true, he'd need more than courage. He'd need the Poké Ball. His hand drifted to it, a small sphere scuffed and worn, its red paint chipped to reveal dull metal beneath. It pulsed faintly against his chest like a heartbeat. But it was empty, for now. The town was a graveyard. Collapsed houses sagged under the weight of time, their windows dark and empty. Overgrown grass cracked through what was left of the pavement. There was no sign of life, just the oppressive silence that made Cal's skin crawl. Until he heard the growl. It started as a low rumble, vibrating through the soles of his boots. Then came the flicker of movement. Shadows darting between the ruins, too fast to track. They'd found him. Cal didn't run. There was no point. Instead, he unhooked the Pokéball, holding it tightly as a shape lunged from the darkness. It had once been a Raticate, or something like it. Its fur was patchy, its body bloated and distorted. Fangs jutted out at grotesque angles, slick with dark saliva. Its eyes were nothing but milky orbs, blind but still filled with rage. Cal sidestepped, slashing with a rusted machete. The blade bit into mutated flesh, but the creature barely flinched. Another one emerged, then another. He was outnumbered, and he knew what that meant. With no choice left, he threw the Pokéball. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, click. A blinding light erupted, casting long warped shadows across the ruins. When the light faded, something stood between him and the creatures. It was a Pokémon, but not like the ones in the old stories. Its body was sleek, shadow black, with jagged white markings like scars. Red eyes burned with feral intelligence. Its claws gleamed, razor sharp. A distorted cry echoed from its throat, a sound that was almost familiar, yet wrong. Cal didn't know what species it had once been. Maybe a Lucario. Maybe something worse. But it was his now. The mutated Pokémon lunged, but Cal's creature was faster. It moved like a living shadow, ripping through them with brutal efficiency. Blood sprayed the crumbling walls, mixing with the dust. When it was over, Cal approached cautiously. The creature turned its crimson gaze to him, head tilting slightly, as if deciding whether he was friend or prey. The Pokéball pulsed faintly, binding its will just enough to keep it in check. For now. Days passed as Cal moved deeper into Pallet Town, his new companion, whom he'd named Void, never far from his side. They made an efficient pair, Cal with his scavenged weapons, Void with its lethal precision, but Pallet held darker things than feral Pokémon. Near the ruins of an old lab, Cal found what he'd been searching for. The ground was cracked, revealing a hidden basement beneath the debris. As he descended, the air grew colder, thick with the stench of rot and chemicals. Broken glass crunched under his boots, and faded notes littered the floor. Scribbles about DNA splicing, combat enhancements, and Project Red. Then he saw it. A large containment pod, shattered from the inside. Claw marks scarred the walls, deep and deliberate. Something had been created here, and it was still out there. A faint voice echoed in the darkness, raspy and fragmented. You shouldn't have come. Cal spun, weapon raised. A figure stepped from the shadows, barely human. His clothes were tatters of what might have been a trainer's uniform. His skin was pale, stretched tight over bones, eyes glowing faintly red. It was Ash Ketchum, or what was left of him. But Ash wasn't alone. At his side floated a Pikachu, or something that resembled one. Its body was distorted, with blackened fur and empty sockets where eyes should have been. Electricity flickered weakly from cracked cheeks. "You brought the ball," Ash rasped, his voice layered with something inhuman beneath. "Good. It's hungry." Void stepped forward, growling. Ash smiled, revealing sharp, broken teeth. "So am I." The final battle wasn't heroic. It was savage. Cal fought with everything he had, machete swinging, blood and ash blinding his vision. Void clashed with the corrupted Pikachu, their attack shattering walls and sending shockwaves through the crumbling lab. In the end, Cal didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he had the last Pokéball. When Ash lunged, feral and shrieking, Cal triggered the capture mechanism. A blinding light engulfed Ash, pulling him into the sphere. Click. Silence. Cal stared at the Pokéball, now heavier in his hand. It pulsed weakly, something dark pressing against the thin barrier between containment and freedom. He had captured a legend, a nightmare, and it was his now, for better or worse. The end.